So now we begin part 4 of the text, what is to test and how to test it. Chapter 13, what we're going to look at is achievement tests. Normally we give achievement tests to students at the elementary and high school level, and so we're going to begin a little study on achievement tests in chapter 13. Achievement tests are a way to measure how much information somebody knows. Or how much has been learned. Sometimes what we'll do is give achievement tests at the end of a academic school year so that we can kind of find out how much the students have progressed in their courses of study and how much they've learned from their teachers during the school year. Sometimes school systems will do sort of a pre-test, give the achievement test at the beginning of the year, and then do a post-test at the end of the year to see how much improvement has been taken or achieved during that particular year. And it's basically going to measure what is known about a particular subject or subjects. Many achievement tests will have portions of different type of academic disciplines within them, and so we can study a whole lot of different subjects. It's the most common type of test. There's a whole bunch of them out there on the market, and we'll learn about a few of them here in this chapter. Another term that you'll see is multi-level survey batteries. You can test material at more than one level or topic during one testing situation. The compass test that we give as the entrance test for the technical college system could be, I think, classified as a multi-level survey battery, because you will start off with one level during the test, and then as you progress you answer more and more and more questions. Your test will give you more and more questions that are a bit more difficult until you get to the point where you've pretty much maxed out on the number of questions that you'll be asked. And so it is no problem for us to go out there and measure multiple levels of achievement. The purposes of achievement tests helps us to define the areas teachers believe are important to assess. Looking at the curriculum, what are the important topics that need to be covered, and then you can design a test to cover those topics. I think one of the dangers of that is whenever you start doing that kind of testing, you sort of teach the test. If you kind of know what you want to test, you just focus on getting that information to the student and just drilling it into them so that whenever they are ready to test, they will just kind of regurgitate that information and do very, very well on the test. But it's really not a major indicator of whether or not the students know anything. They've just been able to regurgitate what they've been taught. And that's one of the criticisms in our high-stakes testing right now with the LEAP test here in Louisiana. But that's a different topic for a different day. It tells teachers if a person has achieved the necessary knowledge in order to move on. Many times those tests are used to pass students, as I've just said, and we're all very familiar with the LEAP testing that are done at the 4th, 8th, and I think 10th grade here in Louisiana. We see if they've achieved the level of competence that they need to be able to move on from elementary school to junior high, from junior high to high school, and then also to be able to graduate. And then you can take the results and group individuals into different skill areas. Once you get your data, you can kind of see where people stand score-wise to each other, and then kind of group them based on their level of knowledge and rank. And then, of course, as we've just said, it helps to identify areas of strength and weakness. We can kind of know what students are strong in, whatever academic area or whatever areas within a course of study, and then see where extra help, extra instruction needs to be done in other different areas. You can also help to assess the success of a program or initiative, especially if, the way dollars are right now. We have all kinds of new programs. Well, if you're trying to prove to, let's say, a grant source that your program is achieving what you said that it would achieve, then you've got the data there to back that up. And so we do that all the time, both for grants and also for our state agencies. Then, when it's all said and done, you want to do this to inform, to be able to inform parents, inform students, inform grantors, legislators, accrediting agencies, that what you're doing works. Now, we've got basically two types of tests. We can have a teacher-made achievement test or a standardized achievement test. Your teacher-made tests, obviously, are constructed by the teacher, him or herself. Now, your emphasis is on measurement concepts, and don't forget our reliability, validity, that we studied way back when, what way we're going to use to score the test, whether we're going to be true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, whatever. But we usually develop very limited types of achievement tests. Of course, it may be quite appropriate for us. We're teaching one course. We want to get an achievement test to measure our students' achievement. And so it's very limited to where it can and can't be used. In our classrooms, it's fine. And it's very appropriate to do it. But it doesn't mean that somebody in Mississippi can take our achievement test and do something with it. Little statistics right here. Teachers spend approximately 33%, or about a third of their professional time, devoted to assessment of students in their classrooms. This was a study done by Stiggins in 1991. It's almost 20 years old. But 1/3 of our time is spent testing, assessing our students' skills and behaviors. Quite a bit of time. Now, just a couple of years before, others estimate that teachers construct an average of 54 tests of performance each school year. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't spend that much time making tests. I don't have the time to do it. But I usually use pre-made tests and then go through them and find the questions that I want and build my tests like that. But obviously, in an academic year, like in elementary school, high school, I don't think that is out of the question that a teacher can and may have to create like 50 some odd tests. That's a whole lot of tests and a whole lot of time that's been taken to do that. Now, on the other hand, a standardized test. These are large-scale assessments that have undergone extensive test development, usually by private or public entities, like a university will create a assessment test. Companies like OCED will create their own test. Another one would be Wonderlic. These are tests that are given to a whole lot of people in a whole lot of places. And so a lot of effort in the way of time and money have been spent to create these tests. And so you have full-time writers that are writing and rewriting test items to tighten them up and to make them clear and correct. You have hundreds and thousands of times that the tests are given to students and graded. And then they go and collect the reliability and validity data. Remember the formulas that we had for reliability and validity. That test data is analyzed constantly to see just how well the tests meet the standards of reliability and validity. And they are expensive. It's a whole lot of money that is spent to get those things created. And as you see, they do cost to take, as in the case of the Compass test, and also the SAT, the ACT, and one that I really remember was the graduate record exam, GRE. That was almost $50 30 years ago, 20 or 25 years ago. And then they have to take that test and then take it almost all day to take it. It was so comprehensive. But yet they are expensive to take and also to develop. And then they're commercially published. That company will usually get a patent or a registration for that test, and if you're going to use it, you're going to have to pay for it. Now, we can either test by group or individually. Now, that basically gets into the delivery and administration. If we're going to do it in a group, usually the majority of achievement tests are administered in a group setting or in a classroom. At our school, we test once a week. We may have a dozen, 2 dozen students come in as a group, and we administer the Compass test. Normally, like for the LEAP test, you'll have a whole group of whatever, either 4th, 8th, or 10th graders that will test as a group. Way back when, the semester I graduated from high school, took the ACT test. There was like maybe 4 or 5 times during the year that we could take the test, and we sat in a very large lecture hall at LSUE, a couple of 300 of us, all taking that test during a Saturday morning in very, very strict and controlled circumstances. Now, we can also give individualized achievement tests. These are usually administered individually, and many of these tests are given to those students that have special needs. They need, they may not be able to read, they may not be able to speak. We can give those tests on an individual basis rather than with a group, because let's face it, we may disturb the group as they're concentrating, and then certainly the environment may be prohibitive to that special needs student. And so we can kind of adapt those tests to their needs also. Now, here's some terms that are fairly new to you. Norm versus criterion reference tests. All right. On a norm reference test, it's going to allow a comparison of an individual's performance to other individuals. So you're able to measure student to student. How student A compares to student B, and C and D and so forth. So we can compare students to students to see how well that they've done. And these norms are often supplied with standardized assessments, but they're not really for teacher-made tests. And so we know, because of the commercial nature of that, we kind of know whether a student's in a certain percentile based on the level of achievement that they made on that test. Now, criterion reference tests are a little different. They define specific criteria or level of performance required regardless of comparison to others. For example, I've been told, and I certainly stand to be corrected, but people who told me this, I trust their what they tell me, and I don't think they'd be lying to me. But in the case of like the LPN licensing exam, it is kind of like a norm reference test. If you've got 1,000 students taking that licensing exam, the cutoff score, whatever it may be, may differ from year to year based on the achievement level of all of the students there that took the test. Let's say if it's a 1,500 that you have to make on the test 1 year, because based on all of their tests, let's say they scored high, and so the bar has been set higher. Let's say the next year the test might have gotten changed, the scores kind of go down, and so they'll find a level that would be appropriate for a cutoff score the next year. And so the standard kind of changed with a norm reference test, but yet with a criteria reference test, it doesn't matter what your how many people take the test. You've got a passing score and a failing score. For example, I took the National Teachers Exam when I first became a teacher, and whoever made the National Teachers Exam said that you've got to score, I think it was a 550. That was a passing score that was set by the U.S. Department of Education, and it didn't matter where you took the test in California, Louisiana, or Alaska. The score was the same, and that was it, because you had to meet that certain criteria level of performance, and you didn't compare yourself to everybody else. That was the score everybody had to reach. And so they're good for content reference material, and I can remember from the test it was about everything that I had studied as a teacher in training in college, and also about industrial arts. I had like 2 sections. One was a general one was a industry or a topic or subject specific test in industrial arts, And they covered it all. Now, of course, many teacher-made tests are criterion reference content reference. You know, you're going to create a test on your course content. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not a norm reference test. You and I are doing criterion reference tests because we are looking at the material itself. Now, if you and I would one of these days want to create a standardized test, these are some things that we would have to consider. We'd have to go and develop some preliminary ideas, which basically covers the scope and sequence of our content. You know, it may be just a tremendous amount of content, especially in the case of like the California Achievement Test, which covers a lot of areas at the high school and junior high and elementary levels. And so that would be difficult to do because of the broadness of that scope of the content. Then you've got to develop some test specifications. And so we want to know specifically what we want to test on. And so that could be, you know, literally thousands of things that would need to be tested on. And then you would write the tests, or I'm sorry, write the questions. And you could probably come up with a large pool of test questions, literally thousands of test questions, math, English, reading, whatever. Then you'd have to take every one of those questions and review them for bias to make sure that we don't have any kind of gender or bias or maybe ethnic bias built into them, or language, whatever. Any kind of thing, bias that might be a possibility, we have to go out there and address. And then the items are piloted in a trial setting. So once you create the test, it's not like you're going to go out and start giving it to everybody who comes along. You need to go out there and do some pilot testing where you give it to certain groups, and then you do your item analysis. But the preliminary tests are constructed and tried. You put together the test and you test it for the ease of use on the part of the test taker, and then how they take the test. I guess the mechanics behind it. But then you go back and look, remember the Cochrane's formula, where you look at your item analysis and see how you can test for the validity and reliability of the test. So there's a whole lot of work that goes on when you're doing a standardized test like that. Then, next step, you may have to rewrite some test items. Whether you're going to be doing, either throwing away some bad questions, or else revising the question, or writing some new questions. You got a whole lot of rewriting, and this usually is done over a period of time because it's not just a one-time deal. You rewrite, repilot, get your results, and so it's sort of a continuous basis. And then finally you get your final tests, your final drafts, and then you can package them up and start to use them. Some national standards are basic. You will do the data analysis of the test, and then once you have given it a few times, you can start preparing your norm tables. So you can get your percentile values created for those that are going to be given the test, and also trying to interpret the results of the test. And then you got to prepare all the necessary materials like test manuals, the testing forms, If you're doing online testing, the environment would need to be created to be able to test, whether it's like Flash enabled or maybe what's the Microsoft version of it, Silverlight, those kinds of things would have to be addressed before you could get this thing out and used by the masses. Now, your table of specifications. It's a grid that serves as a guide for the test construction. It's one-dimensional and is focused on the topic, whatever it is that you're trying to test, the time that you spend in class covering that topic, and then the items that you're going to create that are going to test the student's knowledge of your topic. Now, that's a one-dimensional thing. Two-dimensional adds an additional component. It's a taxonomy of items, and they can range in difficulty, sort of. But yet, you have an example of that here in Table 13.1 of Bloom's taxonomy. And so, look at the things that you're trying to test for. Knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and look at all of the descriptive words that describe that. You would see those kinds of words in your test questions. And these kind of address a higher order learning than just memorization. And so this would be your two-dimensional approach to testing. Now, you can give out knowledge questions, which basically you're just trying to get the student to recall what they know. And you can use your terms here: list, define, tell, describe, identify, and so forth and so on. You can develop comprehension questions which focus on understanding. And these are the terms that would prompt the student to be able to do those things. Your application questions: how do you apply what you know? How do you use the information in real life or in practical applications? And then you see the terminology utilized to ask that question to the student. Here you got your analysis. You got to recognize some patterns and some meanings from the information. Analyze, separate, connect, explain. These are all things that require a much higher depth of knowledge than just true-false questions. Then we've got synthesis questions. Wow, this one's tough. It requires the use of old ideas to create new ones. How do we integrate things or modify, rearrange, substitute? That requires that you have a very thorough understanding of some concepts of something and then be able to take them to another level. Really tough questions to answer. Then we got evaluation questions, which require our students to discriminate among ideas, kind of rank them 1, 2, 3, or put them in some kind of order or importance or things like that. See the differences between them. And here's your terminology: assess, decide, argue, recommend, convince. So we have here a graphic representation of Table 13.2. I'm not going to go through every one of these tests, But I just want to kind of hit a few of them, which are very common that we use throughout education, and certainly one of the most popular and most used is the California Achievement Test, or the CAT test. You know, here's a description of what it covers. It's used from kindergarten to 12th grade. You can use what sections you wish of it, but yet it is widely used from K-12. The dreaded graduate record exam to get into grad school. A brutal test, from what I can remember. But yet it doesn't leave a whole lot out. It covers everything that you would deal with in a college career. Doesn't leave anything out. And so Educational Testing Service, or ETS, created this test. It's still used today for college entrance requirements, especially in the graduate school. The Iowa Test of Basic Skills, ITBS, is a test that some school systems use. I've never seen it used myself. I've only heard about it from other teachers that have taught out of state, and also some educational research that I've read a number of times. So very similar to CAT in its use. Another one, your test of general educational development, your GED test. And so your adult ed programs utilize this test that they give to see whether or not a student is ready to be able to get their GED test. It is also a very complicated and comprehensive test. And I think it's been, your publisher has been bought out, and I want to say I was told by our adult ed instructors at Pearson has bought the GED test and is doing some revisions on it, and they will be the sole provider of GED tests from now on. So it'll be interesting to see what shape, form these tests come up. So, to wrap things up, achievement tests are most common type of assessment. They've got all kinds that are used in all kinds of situations. They focus on knowledge. What does a student know? And they're constructed of a whole bunch of items. And they can be used in large-scale settings where you have literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of students testing at the same time. They can also be used on an individual basis. They're that flexible. And they are used as a powerful ally of the learning process, so we can kind of measure just how well students have achieved by doing the pre-test, post-test type of testing process.